All right, hello everybody and welcome to our Cyberpunk Red GM walkthrough. I'm Miss Magitek, I also go by Tracy, and I am going to be taking us through all of the cool stuff on Roll20 that is now, Cyberpunk Red is on Roll20, so we can actually take a deep dive and look into everything. I am a tabletop streamer and cosplayer. I have played a lot of Cyberpunk Red. I've both been a player and a GM, but I've run quite a few one-shots on my channel, and I've always used Roll20 to run all of my games. And now that we have the full core rulebook and compendium available on Cyberpunk or on Roll20, it is going to make my life so much easier. So let's go ahead and look through what we have, and I will be offering as much advice as I can and just kind of general tips and tricks for what might be helpful for you if you're looking to run your own Cyberpunk Red games as well. So before we get into what it looks like on an actual game, let's go ahead and see how we can access all of this stuff on Roll20. So I'm going to just go ahead, and this is my Roll20 page. So if you go to the marketplace on Roll20, you will see it's actually now a featured product because it just launched this month. So Cyberpunk Red just launched on Roll20 in February 2022. It's brand new. So you can go ahead and access it here. So with this, you can actually get the full core rulebook on Roll20 to access, but you also can get in this bundle the compendium, some add-ons that Roll20 has added, and we're going to go through a lot of that on this stream tonight because there's quite a few cool features that Roll20 has in the add-ons, and also an art pack. So I'm actually just going to show you guys this really quick. The art pack is really nice because it has so much art and NPC tokens from the core rulebook that I can't even tell you guys. Like, this is definitely going to make my life easier because when I would run games, I actually would have to create all of my own tokens, but having access to dozens of NPC tokens is just a dream. It's funny. This character right here, I used in one of my previous games, and I had to make I screenshotted the art and made my own token. So now it's all available in this art pack. So when you purchase all of this stuff, you can actually just go to create game, and this is how you can actually add it to your game. So, you can just Cyberpunk Red. And the other thing is that we also have an official Roll20 character sheet now for Cyberpunk Red, which I will be taking us through as well. So it looks really nice, actually. I've already made a game, so we don't have to, but this is how you can create the game if you get everything from the marketplace. And once you do, it should be in your compendium as well. So this is the Cyberpunk Red core rulebook. You can view it on Roll20 as well if you choose and kind of just go through the chapters. But let's go ahead and see how it looks in a game. So I'm going to just kind of adjust my overlay a little bit here so we can get a better view of once you actually load up the game. It's kind of nice because you get a home screen that is the Cyberpunk Red rulebook as the main page. It's a good starter page for players. Let me just adjust this a little bit more so you guys can see. This is what comes with once you actually get the bundle, and then you also get the map of Night City. That is in the book as well. So that's really nice to have for your players when you're first starting out. And so let's look at some of the stuff that we have for add-ons here. I'm going to go ahead and let's just make this visible. I'm going to pop out the chat, so if we roll anything, it'll just be easier for you all to see. So when you first start out, there's some opening stuff that Roll20 has here. One thing that is super handy, and we're going to go through a little bit more here, is the macros and tables section. They have a ton of macros that they added and generators so that you can generate things first of all, for character creation, for when you want to do character creation with your players, but also for your own game master helpful things to have. So we'll go through all of that, but I would definitely recommend checking out the macros and tables section here, as well as some of the shortcuts if you're somebody who likes to do more shortcuts and macros. And then the full core rulebook is also easily accessible here. So one thing that if you're a regular user of Roll20, you probably already know this, but the Compendium is really handy for when you're wanting to search through things. I was kind of going through this earlier today. And basically anything that you need to search for quickly in the game, you can search for here. So if you are like, I need to know what a heavy pistol, I need to know the stats of a heavy pistol, very heavy pistol. You can pull it up here. We can also even add these to our character sheets, which is really nice. You can actually drag and drop them. So let's go ahead and do that, actually. Let's look at the character sheets. There's a lot. Oh my gosh, there's so much stuff. So when we are... I actually have one that I used that I was looking at last night. I made one for my rocker boy, Ray. She is a character that is very near and dear to my heart. I haven't actually built the character, but I was kind of just messing around with things a little bit. So the character sheets, the new character sheets are really cool. I know that they're working on a couple of things to add to the character sheets in future patches. So that's just an FYI. But here you have like all of your main stats that you roll for when you're creating a character, all of the skills that are, so these are, sorry, the skills are what you actually roll for. The stats are just what you put in at the beginning, and then you can roll your skills. Here's all of your critical injuries when they come up, weapons, armor, gear. Here's all the Lifepath stuff. And this also is part of the Lifepath for character creation. And then cyberware. I kind of actually like that this is all on one page rather than it being tabbed, because in other character sheets, I know sometimes you have to tab through things, and I sometimes get lost on where things are on my sheet. So I don't mind actually having it all on one sheet. At the top here, you have the initiative that you can roll for and your HP as well, which you can adjust as needed if you're in combat. So this is the character sheet. And like I said, if you are looking to add something to your character sheet, you can actually just drag and drop it. So if I, pick up another heavy pistol and I want to just throw it in my player's character sheet, I can just do that with the drag and drop via the Compendium, which is really handy. That's actually something I didn't know you could do, and I just learned that last night. I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. So let's talk about character creation a little bit. I think one thing we can all agree on is very important when you're wanting to run a Cyberpunk Red game, or any tabletop game in general, is having a session zero. That's something that's kind of become more of a standard, but it still sometimes just needs to be said that session zero is really important to have. And that is generally, when I'm doing it, I like to have a session zero to work on character creation with my players. When I've run Cyberpunk Red, a lot of my players are new to the system, so they're unfamiliar with the character creation process. So it's a good time to help them through that. But one of the more fun things with character creation in Cyberpunk Red is the Lifepath. So obviously, when you're first building a character with your players, you'll go through all of the stats, adding in all of your stats and skills. That's obviously very important. And picking your role. So if they want to play a fixer, a media, a solo, that's all important for them to pick. For me, when I've run games, I generally like to get everybody together and we can kind of collaboratively create characters. But I know there are other instances where GMs might want to do like one-on-ones with each player if they want to make it a little more secretive on their backgrounds. I like to do it a little bit more collaboratively, and then we can kind of work together to create what our group is, the whole group dynamic is going to be like. And then when you roll for life paths, which is basically your character's history, what is their life like? What have they done in their life? And what does it all mean for their current status in Night City or wherever you're planning to run your campaign? So the Roll20 add-on actually has a fun way to roll for your life path for your characters. So if we look at the macros and tables tab here, there is some ways to generate all of this. It makes it really easy and quick and simple to do. So there's one way that's like the generate a full character. So if we just click on generate full character, this will take them through like all of the things that they can roll for in the life path. But that's almost something that I think maybe a GM would want to do if you want to create a quick character and throw it together. I wouldn't suggest doing this with a player because it's just kind of like, okay, well, here's your character. Have fun. But then there's also this character generation where you can go through each and every one with your player. So we'll start with, cultural origin, then personality, clothing style, and they can roll for each individual one. So this is all stuff that you would typically do in a Cyberpunk Red character creation. This just makes it easier. There's also these Lifepath handouts that are also an easy way for them to access and just kind of understand the life path. You can show this to your players in session 0 and say, all right, let's go ahead and roll for your life paths. So this gives them all of the description in the book, and then they can roll from each chart. And it shows all of the tables here. So this is more of a visual way to do it. If you go through the basic life path handouts, I think that this is also a really fun way to do it with your players so they can have a visual on the full tables. So again, this would be roll 1d10, and then it just rolls a standard d10, and then they can look at the chart and choose for themselves. So this is another cool way to roll through all of the life path stuff with your character or with your players. I love to do this like with a full group because one of the fun things on doing life paths is if your player has a specific idea and they want to create that up to your, GM discretion, you can let them do that. When I'm creating a character, I sometimes don't think of every little detail that comes with creating a character. So the life path helps. And even though I'm rolling from a generated table, you can still kind of creatively expand on that and come up with a story. So if I am rolling for like my childhood environment, okay, let's say I rolled a 7. This is where I grew up. I grew up in a huge megastructure building controlled by a corp or the city. So that gives me a base foundation, but I can talk with the players and expand on that. And sometimes when you have it more collaboratively with, your full group, somebody comes up with a cool idea that the player likes and they decide to go with. So if somebody suggests, oh, you grew up in like the corporation zone under Petrochem or Biotechnica or somebody like that, and they're like, oh, okay. And so it just kind of gives that level of collaboration that I think a lot of that really I've seen a lot of benefits from when doing character creation with Cyberpunk Red. But again, it's always up to your discretion. If you are somebody who likes to do it more, like let's do it one-on-one, that's also totally fine. So that's a lot of the cool life path stuff. And that's one of the fun ways that you can do character creation with your players in a session 0. The last thing, of course, is role life paths. When they decide what role they want to play, they can roll all of these specific life path choices for that particular role. So this is for the net runner. And they have all of the access here available in all of the tables. So just makes it really convenient and easy to access, which I think this is also on the macro tables as well. So like exec generator. Let's just roll. Okay, so this is like the corporation, the division. Okay, yeah, so this is for each and every one of the exec life path. The macros are very helpful. These generators are very helpful. So that's something that you can do in your session 0. So let's talk about some of these other macro-enabled tables that we have. So another one that's visible to players is, these are useful ones that you'll want during the game sessions that you run, is one, critical injury table. This is another one that's in the core rulebook, but having it as easy access is helpful if your players unfortunately suffer a critical injury, which can happen sometimes. I've not experienced that. Actually, I experienced it once in one of my games thus far, but Cyberpunk Red can be pretty deadly. And the next one is generating a hustle or a side hustle. So one thing that you can do with your players is during downtime, they can do some side hustles, some side gigs. This is actually something we did in the Cyberpunk Red game that I was playing in yesterday. We had 2 weeks off, and I was a player in this one, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm a nomad, or I play a nomad in that game, so I would roll for a nomad side hustle, and I made a legit shipment. And based on your roll ability, you get a certain amount of money. So I'm roll ability rank 5, so I would have got 200 euro bucks from that particular job. And so once you generate this hustle, it's nice to get your players to describe what happened during that side hustle. So, okay, Nomad, you made a shipment. What did you ship? How did it go? So this is very helpful for, getting your players creative during their downtime. So those are most of the player visible macros for what they can see during the game. Actually, I know that right now it says 2GM, but these are ones that if you want to make them visible, you can go and make them visible to all of the players, and they can check out and roll from these tables. So let's talk about some of the GM-specific macro tables that we have. So those are one of the more player-focused ones, but there are some very helpful ones for when you need things as a game master. Because I can tell you all, one of the hardest things that I experience when running any game, any tabletop game, not just Cyberpunk Red, is coming up with certain things on the fly, specifically things like shops. And if my players want to go buy things and buy items, I never really fully prepare shops and inventory and things like that. But I think in the world of Cyberpunk Red, especially if you're playing in Night City, you want to try to make it as lively of a city as you can. It's not like an adventure game where maybe they're out in the wilderness exploring for time. A lot of times Cyberpunk Red settings take place in a lively city, and you need to figure out what you can do to make it a little bit more lively. And things like night markets and bodegas and the vending machines or vendits, as they call them in Cyberpunk Red. Those are ways to kind of add a little bit of life to your game and to your world. And there are lots of charts and tables in the Cyberpunk Red core rulebook. But I think when you're running a game online, having access to these via macros and generators, it, once again, makes life very easy. So one thing that we have here are these vendit generators, night market generators and bodega generators. So vendits are basically vending machines that are scattered throughout Night City. I would recommend throwing them in. You say, if you're describing a place that they're visiting, that you say, oh, and you see some vendits on the side, one that has a chrome hot dog with relish on it, and they know that that's a food one. And then you see one with a girl in a dress, and so they know that that's a clothing one, and they might want to interact with that. So you can actually make some food vendit generator. There's a personal one, and then just plain weird. So let's see. Some of the just plain weird ones are very interesting. So you can actually just roll from the generator, and it'll give you some items. So if they want to get some food from the vending machine, they got their choice of ramen noodles, canned juice, hot meat, more canned juice, sushi, kibble, more noodles, more kibble. And again, these are all things that are on the tables in the book, but this just kind of makes it easier for you to get access to them. The personal vendit has things like surgical masks, underwear, floral arrangements, and then the plain weird ones. Oh, they're always my favorite. Paper cosplay costumes. I don't know what we would get from that. Pet wigs. Very, very useful. So it's just kind of a fun way to add some life to your game. The next one is the bodegas. So bodegas in Night City are they're kind of just like places where if your players are like, oh, we want to celebrate after our most recent gig, let's go get some alcohol at the bodega. That's where they would go to get it is like convenience stores, but there's always interesting characters in bodegas. And it's not just, whenever your players will visit a bodega, I would wholly recommend that you don't just make it just, okay, you get in, you get out. You want to add something there that they might be interested in. So the bodega generator actually gives you a description of who the owner would be, what's their story, and a couple of colorful customers. Sometimes, I know when I have seen previous bodegas, it might be like there's a gang member there who, gets involved in something in the bodega. So this is a way to generate that and make things a little more interesting for when you go to a bodega. And the last one, which I think is the biggest one for Cyberpunk Red, is night markets. Night markets are a very popular thing within the world of Night City, and I think a lot of your players, they might be the most interested in checking out a night market because this is where you can actually get cool stuff. If they do a lot of jobs and they're making good money and they want to spend that money, they likely will want to visit a night market. And night markets are basically these traveling pop-up shop areas, and they move around Night City, and different nights they're in different locations, and your players have to be either A, lucky enough to find one, or B, know somebody who knows somebody that can help them find one. So a lot of times if you have a fixer in the group, it's generally the fixers have more of those contacts that can help them find a night market, but other times they may just have to find somebody, an NPC that they know in the world that can help take them to a night market. So because of that, we have the night market generator, which will help you build out your night market because they can get a little complex. And again, there's a lot of tables for them in the book, and it can be a little complex to go through. So what we have here is once you click night market generator, it will take you to all of the different shops that you can have in the night market. So if you want a clothing and fashion wear, cyberware, food and drug, personal electronics, survival gear, weapons and armor. And you can decide as the game master what you want to have in this night market. I generally like to have a little bit of everything. I like to do kind of store by store. So when they access the night market, there might be like a shady guy cleaning a rifle, and they can tell that that's the weapons seller. Maybe there's a really fashionable person that's decked out in beautiful fashion wear, and they can tell that that might be the person to go for new clothes. So this is all things that you can add to your night market. So once you click on one of these, it'll give you items that they can have in their inventory. So this, again, just makes it a lot easier. I know just in general in tabletop games, coming up with items in a shop is not always the easiest thing to do. This just kind of pulls that all together and can really add some interesting things to your night market. So I'm a big fan of night markets. They're a really fun place to visit, and I think they're a highlight of Cyberpunk Red games. So that's a lot that we went through as far as all the macros and tables. And actually, I closed out of it, but we're not even done because I forgot the last ones that are also super important. Oh my gosh. So the last macros that we have here are encounter building macros. And I think these are another really important and helpful one for game masters. We have NET Architecture, Random Encounter, and Screamsheet Generators. So NET Architecture, this is if you have a netrunner in your group, which a lot of times netrunner always seems like the most exciting role for people to want to play as. I always, whenever there's a netrunner in my group, I get a little nervous because it's one of the cool roles in Cyberpunk Red, but it's also a complicated role for game masters because netrunners want a net run. So you have to build basically an encounter for them if they do decide to get into a net architecture. And so here is a net architecture generator where you can basically build out a net architecture for your netrunner on the fly if need be. This is handy too if your players decide to, like I like to sometimes build out my net architectures ahead of time. But there was actually one instance where I had player get into or wanted to go into something that it was actually they wanted to hack into like a corporation's net architecture, which is not a smart thing to do. And so I was like, okay, well, I did not build out a net architecture for all of Petrochem, but we can do that right now. And so this helps you build that out. So you can go by like the lobby. It'll give you an encounter. So this is a file. Then if they, get past that, they can go on the next floor. This will give them an ASP. I always forget ASP. And then standard floor, if you want to get them this far, there's a Hellhound, which is, those are not fun to fight. And so then there's uncommon floor, another Hellhound. So you can kind of build this out as you go. You can go through each of the floors. If they do want to go into like a really advanced net architecture, like one that would be at a corporation like Petrochem, I would definitely throw at them a full advanced floor with a Kraken, which is in the net architecture is a very difficult demon to fight. So yeah, this really helps you build this out for your Netrunner, especially if you want to build stuff on the fly. I think it's very helpful to have that available. The next one is just general random encounters. This table will help you get random encounters for both daytime, evening, and midnight. So daytime encounter are some scavers. Let's see what a evening encounter would look like. Street punks. And a midnight encounter, corporate guards. The midnight encounters always scare me. So this is a way to give your players some extra encounters if they need it, or if they're traveling through Night City. I like to do like one encounter if they're like driving from one location to another. I think that is very helpful. Yeah, the midnight corporate guards. Let's read this description really quick. A group of corporate guards equal to the players patrolling the area, carrying smart gun linked heavy SMGs. What are you doing on property after midnight? Can't have a good reason. Oh, gosh. Okay, so then it tells you to use security officers, replace assault rifles with SMGs, add interface plugs, and smart gun link. That sounds incredibly scary. I would not want to encounter this. So let's say you want to get the security officer stat block. So I think this is the... you can get a token for it, and then here, they do have it. Hey, look at that. Okay, so yeah, this is the NPC token and all of their stats as well, which is really, really nice. You could just quickly look that up in the Compendium and throw it on your map, and then you're good to go. So yeah. So those are all of our generators. Actually, I think there was one more. Did I miss one more? Let's check. I think I missed one more. Yeah, Screamsheet Generator. Screamsheets are basically like news that might be happening at the time in Night City. You can also use Screamsheets as a way to basically as a way to create a mission in your game. So you can use the Screamsheet Generator to help with that as well. So these are all of the cool macros and generators that are available on Roll20. I think they're very, very helpful and just make life easy. And then some of the other handouts kind of help supplement that as well. This is building a net architecture, which again, when I first ran Cyberpunk Red, I actually took a screenshot of it on my digital book and just made it a handout in Roll20. And so now it's just really funny that I can actually, this is just an add-on now that we can just access this now so easily. And this kind of talks about the encounters. So this is all, again, from the core rulebook itself and the descriptions on, what encounters are like. And it directs you right to the random encounter table here as well. So pretty convenient. Yeah, the night market handout. Let's just kind of take a look at this really quick. So you have that easy access. So these are just some of the things that, you may have more often, or just kind of like the handy reference things that it's just nice to have rather than flipping through a book. Don't get me wrong. I love my book, and I tend to use the book as like my study time. When I want to study, for my game, I'll take my book and like go on my couch and read. But when I'm in the middle of the game, I very rarely go through the book and reference things. So it's nice to have it kind of handy, a handy reference in digital form. So the last thing that we have here is the Screamsheets. So in the back of the book of Cyberpunk Red, there are 3 pre-generated Screamsheets that Cyberpunk Red has created, Artelsorian has. These are missions that you can have for your players. I actually used one of these for one of my one-shots. The very first one-shot that I ran was the Wood Pirates mission in the back of the book. So I actually would recommend, this was a really fun one. My players loved this particular Screamsheet. I would totally recommend running it. So this has all of the description of that particular mission in a handy handout. So if you're looking to run a one-shot, I would actually recommend checking out some of these Screamsheets in the back of the book. I haven't tried the other 2, but the Big Break one actually sounds interesting to me. I might use this one for a future one-shot. So this kind of has everything laid out for you. This is basically your guide to the one-shot. It gives you the player information, so you can give them this background in however way you want to roleplay that out in your story. This is all the stuff that the players know and what they'll learn as they're exploring through it. Basically, Biotechnica gives them a job to go to one of their artificial forests outside of Night City, and some bad things happen. Basically, some pirates show up and they're trying to steal stuff from Biotechnica. So this is the information that they get, and they're hired to do this job. The Game Master notes, this is what you know that the players don't quite know, and they can learn as they are exploring this mission. So these are things that you can kind of reveal as you go through it. And then this is the Screamsheet. So the Screamsheet is what you can show your players, as this is kind of like a news handout for them. And I'll actually take this entire page and I actually just make it a handout in the game and I show it to them and they can read it like they're reading. They open up their agent and they read the news. This Screamsheet helps with that. So this is also it written out in text format rather than the screenshot. So yeah, that's the Screamsheets. I think that they are very cool and very helpful for when you're first running a Cyberpunk Red game. I've been playing Cyberpunk Red since it first launched, and I was very intimidated to run a game for myself. I've always been mostly a player, and I haven't been as much a GM, but I think a lot of the stuff in the book, it does really make it easy for you to run. If you just want to do a one-shot to get your feet wet, I think that's a totally valid thing to do. That's what I did. And it was so much fun. Everybody loved it. And now they're all asking me, when are we playing more Cyberpunk Red? So, yeah, I would recommend just checking out some of like the one-shots if you want to start out with that. And then your players, like Panic Switch and Chat, will keep asking you when you're going to run more games. The last thing that I want to talk about here and all of the handout stuff is the pre-generated characters. So these are actually the full character sheets. I know I pulled up my character sheet earlier that didn't have all of the stats and everything. But these are all pre-gen characters that Artelsorian Games has made for each of the role abilities. And so this is our lovely exec. Here on the bio and info sheet, you have all of the exec details and all of the role abilities. So when you're creating a character, you always want to start at rank 4, and then as your players level up, they can level up in rank, and they get additional things as they level up. But here's just kind of a breakdown of this pre-gen character and their stats and skills. And so then here is all of their stats. This is what it looks like with like a fully filled character sheet. So yeah, the skills are tabbed out by all of the different like categories, which I also find to be helpful because Cyberpunk Red has a lot of skills. And sometimes I'm like, okay, when they say roll like a personal grooming check, and I'm like, okay, I think that's social. Yeah, okay, cool. And this is what it looks like when you roll for the personal grooming or for any of your stats. It'll actually show the breakdown of the dice when you're rolling. Yeah, the sheet is very nice. It's very aesthetic. Here, I'll kind of make it a little bit bigger so you all can see. I love its entire aesthetic. It looks really nice. So here we have, again, the critical injury table, which you can add if that does come up. Any addictions that they might have. One thing, if you have your weapon and you want to roll, it's pretty handy because this is what it looks like when you roll an attack. It'll show the hit, and then it also shows the full chart for the distance. If you're, depending on where the person you're shooting at is, the difficulty value goes up based on how many meters away they are. And so this chart is easy reference for that. And it also shows the damage. So it's basically an all-in-one roll. You don't have to make multiple rolls. Like, okay, I rolled a 19 to hit. All right, let's check the chart on how far away they are. Okay, so they're 7 meters, so the DV is 15. Okay, you hit. All right, now roll for your damage. All right, I do 14 damage. No, this is actually all just in one handy roll. You could just click attack, and there you go. So that's pretty handy. I know that some of the other sheets did have something similar to this, but it's nice to have just all as one easy reference. I know the first time I played, I made everybody roll multiple times, and it was not easy. And then here's all your gear that you can have, just like it drops down, so if you want to put your notes in there as well. I just really, really like this. I think it looks really great. Having the ability to tab down and look at things if you don't want to have just like so much notes and things. It's very nice. And this is where you can throw in all of your Lifepath stuff. So when you're rolling for your Lifepath with your players, they can just put it all in here. I really like that also, the character sheet. So there's nothing, this pre-gen character sheet doesn't have anything for the Lifepath, but before you can even type anything, it gives you kind of a little description of each of them. So what do you value most? It says, what motivates you? Family background. Who are you and where did you originally come from? Where were you born? So it gives you a little bit of that like inspiration for when you're doing your Lifepath. This is all already built into the character sheet, which is really cool. Next up is things like friends and tragic love affairs. Again, things that you can roll for on the table, and then you can just go ahead and add them in and any details that you want to add on your character sheet. The last thing, of course, is cyberware, which is very important for your players. They can spend a certain amount of money, depending on what method you go for character creation. You can spend some money and get yourself some cyberware, and then when your players want to buy more cyberware, they're going to want to go to a night market, and they can you can roll a nice handy night market generator and give them some cyberware to buy from. So it's pretty cool. So this is the full character sheet, and yeah, I'm a big fan. So the pre-generated characters are handy to have if you do kind of want to throw a character in there, and you may not. Even if you don't want to use the actual character background that they have, it's nice to just kind of have a handy character sheet. So if you know they're going to encounter a fixer at this bar. I think this is the fixer, right? Yes. So you may use the character art. You may have a different name for them. You may have something in your mind of what you want that to be, but you have the full character sheet for a fixer available. And it's kind of just, for me, that's always nice to have in case I need to make a roll for this fixer. I can just use the pre-generated fixer character sheet for that. It's just kind of helpful. So that's just one of my my other little tips. So the last thing that I want to show is all of the character art. So let's take a look at the art pack. Okay, so there's a lot of character art. There's a lot of tokens. Look at all these tokens. Oh my gosh. There are hundreds of tokens. They even have, so they have tokens for just general NPCs, but they also have like important characters within the world of Cyberpunk Red. So yeah, like these are the human named characters. These are all of the, oh, let me move this a little bit so you all can see. One sec. These are all of the characters, and I say so like these are all the execs. I forget all of their names, but they have names. Lilaya, she's one of the like named characters in the game. Yeah, they're canonical. So if you do plan on using like canonical characters in your Cyberpunk Red game, they have all of the actual canon lore characters in the book. And here are all of the like the additional NPC tokens, human tokens. Oh my gosh, so many tokens. Wow. I didn't even realize how many there were till, I mean, we saw them all on the other page, but I was like, oh, okay, this is a lot. But actually scrolling through this is a lot of characters. So say you want to keep this nomad token. What I like to do is either copy to my library or copy to a folder. I actually think I have like a Cyberpunk Red folder. I thought I had built one already, but maybe I didn't. And then it gets saved to your folder, so it just is very easy to just throw them in there, and then you have your tokens. So yeah, I would recommend going through, if you do buy all of the assets, kind of going through them beforehand and knowing like, okay, I'm probably going to end up using like a fixer. I'm going to have a nomad. I might have a couple of NPCs, and then throw them in your folder so you have easy access to them. So does the book, so Stands in the Fire asks, does the book come with a token page in the page list that has all of them out and viewable? I know some modules do that as one of the available pages. I don't think they do, actually. That's a good question. So no, but I do know that obviously like on the main page, they have like all of them laid out, but that's actually a good thing, a good note to think about, because it would be very helpful. So yeah, that is, I realized I went through this a lot quicker than I thought. That's all of the cool stuff that they've added for Roll20 in Cyberpunk Red. It's just very nice now to have the full book available and have that for easy access. It's just, there's so much cool stuff that is just now available for us to have in your game. So I do like very much strongly recommend getting this the full package for this if you're planning on running some games. Being able to have that, the character art, having these easy handouts, and then having the full book with the compendium makes it easy to just search for things, throw them in your character sheet if you need to, get all your stat blocks together, get everything together. It very much makes life easy and convenient. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I am very happy to answer the questions that I know, or just general GM tips for Cyberpunk Red. I am very happy to give any other tips and advice. I can say if you're planning on running one-shots, always give yourself more, like always expect that things might run over, because therefore I think every single game that I've run, we've gone over like the time that I thought we would take. So always kind of make some, like, find out, you know, if you think you're going to play, like, hey guys, let's do like a 3 or 4 hour one shot. I would recommend trying to find ways to wrap things up a little bit quickly if you want to keep it within a certain amount of time, because my games somehow have always run over. I think just in general, Night City is a very exciting place. And I know my players like to say, like, let's go to a club. Even if that's not part of the mission, somehow my players always want to go to a club in Night City. So have yourself prepared, like have a club prepared. And if you need to use the generators to help prep that and prep the NPCs in there, I would definitely recommend that. So that's the thing. I think with Cyberpunk Red, it's players want to explore the city as much as they can. So trying to build things like clubs, bars, hangout spots, it's good to kind of have those things prepped and ready to go in case they do want to explore those kinds of things. And yeah, make sure you have your NPC stat blocks ready. Whatever enemies you have ready to go, make sure you have those handy, because sometimes when I have them roll initiative, I'm like, okay, let's go. And I don't always have everything prepared. It's nice to just kind of have that already ahead of time. What's your favorite role to play? My favorite role to play is Rocker Boy. I always go toward more of the social focused characters. And I think Cyberpunk Red has quite a few of those. But Rocker Boy is a really fun one. Their charisma is just so good. And they have the ability to kind of sway people into believing them or following them with their role ability. So I think in Cyberpunk Red, there are more quote unquote combat focused roles, and then there are more quote unquote social focused roles. This is very general. You can obviously make things whatever you want, and you are free to explore with your creativity how you want to make certain characters. But if I were to, let me not hit my microphone. If I were to break it down, I would say the social roles would be the media. So this is media. The exec. Execs are also a lot of fun to play. Probably my other favorite. The Rocker Boy is a more of a social role. And then I would say probably, the Fixer. The Fixer is also that's the solo. The Fixer. So if you're looking for more of a social role to play, you can choose from Fixer, Rocker Boy, exec, or media. If you want something that's a little more on the combat side, I would say obviously the solo. The solo is a big one. I've played one solo for a one shot. The nomad, yes, because nomads are a lot of times they are your drivers. I stereotypically play a nomad who is a driver, and I think that's fine. It's cool to have somebody who can drive and get cool cars and things and cool vehicles in Night City, and it's very useful to have that. But you can obviously expand the nomad to a lot more than just being the driver. So they can quote unquote be like a hybrid in between the two, I would say. And then the Medtech, which is another fun one. I think Medtech is really cool because if you get hurt, you got to find a way to get help. And trauma team, there's a whole chapter in the book on just the trauma team, which is basically your medical people. And so it's nice to have a Medtech in your party. I'm just saying. And then there is the Lawman. Lawman is a great one. You can make a lot of very unique characters with Lawman. Doesn't have to be like NCPD. This can be all sorts of different aspects of the Lawman. And then we have the tech. The tech and the Netrunner, I feel like, are kind of their own category. I wouldn't call them combat focused. I guess they're more utility focused. And I guess even the Nomad could be considered more utility focused. But they're all very unique roles, and I honestly want to play all of them. I've yet to play a Netrunner, I've yet to play a Medtech, and I've yet to play a tech. But I've had all of those. I've had every role in my games that I've run. I've had all of them. I've experienced all of them. I've experienced players doing all sorts of stuff for each of these particular roles. So, yeah. And you can also multi-class, quote unquote, in this game. So in one of my games, we had a player she was a Netrunner, but she ended up getting a lot of interest in specific topics in Night City and finding more details on them. So she actually took some roles in media after when she leveled up. So she was a media Netrunner, and it was a very interesting combination. So it's fun to kind of explore those multi-classes if you can. I love doing multi-class stuff, so that's always fun. So yeah, but like we can't not talk about the Rocker Boy and how awesome playing a Rocker Boy is. I actually just love the character art for Rocker Boy. I made my character and I used this character art, Ray, and I'm happy because I'm like, you know what? This is what my Rocker Boy would look like. She looks really cool. So yeah, I love all of the art in this book. It's so incredible. Yeah, it's Night City is. I play a lot of D&D, but honestly, Cyberpunk Red and just the world of Night City is just one of my favorite worlds to just fully immerse myself in. I actually do think it is very much escapist. Like, I can actually escape to Night City when I play these games. I can fully immerse myself in the world when I play. And so there's just something very special about Night City and Cyberpunk Red. I especially love the setting in Cyberpunk Red because it's the year 2045-ish. So this takes place between Cyberpunk 2020, which was the older rulebook by Art Talsorian Games. And then there's, of course, Cyberpunk 2077, which is the game. They're all in a shared universe with like the same canon characters and everything like that. But Cyberpunk Red takes place right in between that. And the setting for Cyberpunk Red is after the big attack on Arasaka Towers, which is something that you explore in the game, but it's like a big point of Cyberpunk 2020, which is the older game that came out, that Art Talsorians published. I think it was like the 90s that they came out with that. And there's obviously a lot of supplementary material for Cyberpunk 2020. There's even an older one before Cyberpunk 2020, but the main one is 2020. And that was what brought the popularity that Mike Pondsmith created and brought that popularity of Cyberpunk for the tabletop world. And so Cyberpunk Red, for a while, they had a jumpstart kit of Cyberpunk Red, which was kind of like a base rule book with these pre-gen characters that if you wanted to play Cyberpunk Red, for a while, we just had the jumpstart kit. And it was, very base rules and rule set. The full Cyberpunk Red core rulebook came out just a year and a half ago, and not too long ago. So now it's fully playable. There's a full rulebook, and there's a whole universe and a lot of lore to explore. Yes, and definitely Stands in the Fire. You have nailed it in chat. It is Cyberpunk Red is kind of has that apocalyptic feel because they call it red because they call it the time of the red because basically there's a lot of fallout from the Arasaka attack. It was basically a nuclear bomb that went off in Night City. And there is now an entire area that is affected by this nuclear bomb. It's called the Old Corp Center. So this black area right here is called the Hot Zone. And it is a dangerous area for your players to explore. You can absolutely explore it, but it is dangerous There are probably scavers and all sorts of danger in this area. But a lot of times, the whole city will have these blood red skies from all of the nuclear damage and fallout that happened back in 2020 or so, whatever year it was. And so now here in 2045, there's just so much, there's like this rebuilding of Night City. So even the corporations, they still have power, but they don't have that same hold on Night City that they once did many years ago. They're rebuilding that, and they eventually do get back to it. Arasaka eventually gets back to what they once were as a corporation. But they're kind of in this rebuilding. And that's the funny thing. I actually feel like Arasaka takes kind of a back seat in Cyberpunk Red. So when people talk about, obviously, because of the game, Arasaka has been very, is like a common corporation to talk about. But I feel like they actually take a step back in Cyberpunk Red. They're not the main focus of all of the corporations in the city. So you don't have to center your game around that. You can absolutely have nods to that in your game if you want to. I think Arasaka is a very interesting corporation. So I love the lore of that. But you don't have to explore that in your Red games. There's a ton of other corporations that you can explore if you want to have that corpo story. And they dive on that a little bit more in the actual core rule book. So if you want to learn about them, that was my favorite part when I was reading through, is learning about the big major corporations in Night City, like Petrochem, Net 54, Savoil, Trauma Team, Ziggurat. Learning about them and where they are right now, what their hold is on the city is very interesting. And outside of the city is pretty trash too, if I recall. Yes, I think a lot of outside of Night City is also just not a good, not good. Some of the nomad clans I think are more outside of the city, so that you can explore that. But it's like very, very trashed. They do explore a lot of that more in the book, like what the state of the world is at this point in time as well, outside of Night City. So. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can explore if you're looking to run a game, and if you want to do like a more fully fledged campaign, a fully fleshed out campaign, and not just like a one shot. There are some great resources online. I would highly recommend checking out some of the Cyberpunk Red communities on Reddit and on Discord. There's some great Discord communities for Cyberpunk Red, and I actually got a lot of my inspiration and a lot of the things that I learned from these communities. So check out some of the community stuff for Cyberpunk Red, and check out what they have on Roll20 for helping you run the game. So if you want that, if you want some inspiration, I would say go to the communities, and then when you're ready to run it, definitely try to check out all the stuff that we have on Cyberpunk Red Roll20 and let that help you build your game. So that is everything for me as far as the deep dive into all of the add-on stuff and everything for the core rulebook. There is so much more that we could talk about. I could honestly sit here and talk for hours about the world of Cyberpunk. We could be here for a while. That's why even now I just kind of went off on a little tangent, and I think that's totally fine. Because I think it's great to talk about this stuff with all of you and talk about how you can build your own Cyberpunk Red games. So if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me, and just feel free to check out all of the stuff that Roll20 has available now that Cyberpunk Red is on their site and fully ready to go on the app. So definitely check it out. And I wish you all luck in running your Cyberpunk Red games. It is a really fun system. It's not that hard to learn. I'm telling you, if I can do it, you absolutely can do it too. So I know the biggest thing is always scheduling. Scheduling is always our enemy because it's hard to schedule games with people. But I know the other thing that can be intimidating for GMs is just like trying to understand and learn the system and get your feet wet into GMing. So if you're, not as experienced with GMing, I do genuinely think Cyberpunk Red is a good one to get into and learn for not experienced GMs. because I don't consider myself a experienced GM at all. I'm a player first and then a GM, but it's really, really easy to learn and to get into. And so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. This VOD, will also be available on YouTube, and you can check out the VOD even here on Twitch. And I wish you all, once again, wish you luck in your Cyberpunk Red adventures, and good luck in Night City, everybody. I'll see ya.